Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of the Rolling Over 40 podcast. I'm your host, Connor Whalen, and today I am joined by my 9th guest. And let me give this gentleman a proper introduction. My guest today has been training for on and off for 20 years. He has a background in various martial arts, from Muay Thai, kickboxing, Jiu Jitsu, wrestling, etc. He's going to tell us about all that. He's my second guest who trains at Steez Jiu Jitsu in Tustin, like my 4th guest, Jeremy Lee, although he has actually trained at my gym as well, One Jiu Jitsu in Tustin. In fact, he trained there for one night about a week ago or so, a couple weeks ago. He also happens to be the older brother of a training partner of mine, Tae Kwon from episode 6. Check it out. And please welcome Dale Corzine. And Dale, I've been looking forward to this ever since Cody told me about you in episode 6. So thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you here. And how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to it all week. And real quick, I just have to get this out of the way because I promised Cody and I's dad. Our last name is pronounced Corzine, and that's a pet peeve of his. So he made me promise, or I would be removed from the family will if I didn't correct you.
So Corzine, okay. And
That's
what
right.
is the what is the etymology of that name? Where's it from?
I think we're Italian and German. So I think the Corzine, that's the Italian, which probably is pronounced
Oh, it's
Corzine.
Italian. Okay.
But we roll with it with the long I, with
Yeah.
Corzine.
Corzine. Something
Exactly.
like that. Dale Corzine is with the correct pronunciation of your name. And you are partially responsible for why your little brother is such a freaking beast. Which you, when meeting you yesterday, also to our listeners that don't know, I just met Dale face to face yesterday for the first time, and it was an absolute pleasure meeting you. But before that, I only knew you via Instagram and messaging and whatnot. But met you at your gym, and it's cool. I'm kind of really starting to get to know Steez. I've been, in and out of Steez a lot lately, and getting to know the place. Jimmy actually. I know Jimmy from before because my kids did a trial class at Steez
Okay.
way back when, during the like I told Jeremy about, before they had the current location, when they were in that little tiny spot. So I took my kids there for a trial class a long time ago. But what was I saying? Yeah, you using little Cody as a punching bag all his childhood, and I don't know if you wanted to clarify any of that, but that's helped Cody become the beast that he is.
I don't know if punching bag is the right term or the one that I would love to get out there, but Cody was always, little brother, and we have another brother in between he and I. We're all kind of 4 years apart, so Cody and I are 8 years apart, and our other brother has zero interest in martial arts or wrestling or any of that stuff. So Cody was Cody was the guy, and every time I learned something I thought was cool, I brought it home and showed him, and my way.
But did he actually have interest, or did he have interest,
sure.
or did he just not have a choice?
No, he for sure had an interest,
he did. All right.
And most of the time he had a choice. But yeah, so
not all the time.
Well, I'm his big brother, right? Yeah, there is a little bit of that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
My way of thinking about it was like, Cody, you're never going to have issues with your peer group. If you can survive, the carpet beatings with me, you're going to be just fine. So, yeah, no, but
right.
I was learning all kinds of cool stuff, and I just, I had a passion for it, and I kind of always pushed that on him, and most of the time he was into it, yeah. But just over the years, seeing where he's progressed to and seeing where he is now, it's amazing. It's seeing the amount of effort he puts into it, and the thought, and the notes, like he was saying on his podcast. It's pretty amazing to see his growth and how quickly he's become a beast. It's pretty amazing. I'm proud of him.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And but I mean, what you just said, because I definitely want to talk about that. And one thing I'm just interested in with a lot of people and everybody I have on this show is where did the interest come from? Where did the seed come from? Because for me, it came late. I had not the greatest experience in a Tae Kwon Do class in 4th grade with just, it was kind of Cobra Kai style. It was not fun. I didn't make any friends. The coach was not nice at all. Nobody there was nice. I just had a bad experience with
Right.
martial arts. And but you, I mean, sound like you had an interest in wrestling and kind of combat sports from a pretty young age. Like, do you remember like how young you were when you were interested in that kind of stuff?
Oh, I mean, very, very young. And it started with, action movies and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. And I watched all those movies. I was always into it, always kind of doing ninja moves in the house. And I always was fascinated with it, the techniques and the just like those badass dudes that could handle themselves. And and I had a bad school was not fun for me. I got bullied a lot. So watching those movies and kind of like fantasizing about one day becoming one of those guys was something that started really, really young. And I did Tae Kwon Do. I think I was probably like 10 or 11. I did it for a few years. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved, wrestling around with buddies and from a very young age, I loved martial arts and anything martial arts related. So that was a very early passion of mine, and it's continued throughout my life for sure.
Yeah, so Tae Kwon Do is where it started a few years, and then, like I remember you were telling me yesterday, wrestling was next, though, right? Did it go from Tae Kwon Do and then wrestling?
Yeah, my best friend in high school and I had always talked about wanting to try it. We knew it was like the hardest sport you could do, and I think we kind of just every season would roll around, we'll be like, well, next year we'll do it. And finally, senior year, he and I did it together, and I loved it. I took to it pretty well. Just the learning to push through things and learning that your body has a lot more to give than you think it does, and getting past those mental hurdles of thinking like, I can't go anymore, I can't do another push-up, I can't, and being able to push through those things. That was a big lesson and a big area of growth I had in my senior year in wrestling, and learning that your mind is in control of your body, and you can tell your body what to do. You can push through those things. That was just that 1 year of wrestling I did probably taught me more about myself than anything I've done since. And I regret not doing it sooner, but I absolutely loved wrestling. I was a varsity letterman the first, senior year, the first year I did it. So I was having success, and I was channeling all that, the anger from being bullied. It was just this outlet I had to get rid of all that. And wrestling was kind of saved me in a big way from all that anger and all that inside stuff that was going on. And towards the end of the season, though, I was realizing like I'm about to graduate. I'm not good enough to be a college wrestler, and I would like to keep this going somehow. I'd like to keep this, do something with this, and I didn't know what that was. And at the time, I was also renting all of the old UFC VHSs at Blockbuster Video. Every time
VHS,
I would I would rent a new one and watch them, and watching the Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock days, and the UFC had been around long enough at that point to where I could kind of see the areas, like the evolutions it went through. Hoist Gracie started and was just running through everybody. And then there was a period of time where the wrestlers were the guys, and they were able to shut the submissions down and just stay on top and take people down and ground and pound. And then later, we had the era of the strikers who could shut the takedown, keep people from taking them down and make them stand and knock people out. So seeing like the different ways people put their skills together and used them and applied them was really, really interesting to me. And this was all at the same time I was wrestling. And one of my coaches actually had an amateur MMA fight. And so we all went and watched him train for it. And that kind of opened my eyes to...
Let me just ask you real quick. This is one of your wrestling coaches? Or was this a coach? Oh, so high school wrestling coach.
Right. So he showed up to practice one day.
Like your senior year.
Showed up to practice one day and said, hey guys, I'm doing this cage fight. MMA wasn't even a term then. It was like no holds barred fighting.
Right. No holds barred, cage fight, which makes it sound, I mean, cage fight, yeah, that makes it sound so much more like
Yeah,
menacing.
for sure.
But now it's just MMA. So, okay, so your wrestling coach comes in one day and says, "Hey guys, I'm going to go do a cage fight."
Yeah.
And that must have been a crazy. Did you guys even know that he was doing that on the side at all? Or
No, and
this was just
he had
all
never
came
done
out
it
of
either.
nowhere?
He just got like an offer to go
Wow.
do it, and he really didn't train for it very much. He, tried to get in a little bit better shape, and I remember us dragging a heavy bag into the wrestling room, and him kind of beating on that thing every once in a while. But it wasn't like a sport back then. It was more of just like a freak show kind of thing. And so we were all
Right.
just like, "Oh man, Coach
Yeah.
Darren's
Yeah.
Darren's going to do a cage fight! Wow!" And so that was
Right.
kind of my introduction to realizing like, oh, there is something I could do with the wrestling. There is somewhere to go from here. Wow, this cage fighting thing sounds interesting.
Right.
And so that was the kind of the birthplace of me jumping into MMA. Was, I was about to graduate. I knew there were some gyms in the area that did jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and all the kind of the things that all are incorporated into MMA. And I just, that was it. I decided like, I'm going to give this a try and see if I can do this.
And just for our listeners who don't know, because I just learned this yesterday, this was in Portland, Oregon, right?
Portland, Oregon. Yep. That's where I went to high school. That's where it all started. And at the time, Portland was like a hotbed for MMA. We had a couple really big gyms. Team Quest was one of them. That's where Randy Couture and Matt Lindland and Dan Henderson and Chael Sonnen were all at. And Chael Sonnen co-owned an amateur league for MMA called FCFF, the Full Contact Fighting Federation. And
Okay.
so there were a bunch of gyms around.
Okay.
There were a bunch of people into it, and a bunch of jiu-jitsu gyms as well. And this was before jiu-jitsu was a big thing. I remember the first exposure I got to actual jiu-jitsu was I was a high school wrestler, and I had this buddy who said he did jiu-jitsu, and I was like, oh, I know what that is. I've watched the UFC, but I've never rolled with anybody. So we went up to the wrestling room, and he was much smaller, but he just did whatever he wanted with me. And I had wrestling experience at that point, and I was just like, I have to learn how to do this. This is crazy. He was arm barring me and choking me and sweeping me and just whatever he wanted to do. And it was, it blew my mind.
And but he had so this guy had training in jiu-jitsu.
Right. He was a blue belt.
And he just kind of wanted to, like, did he just want to like show you, here's what you're missing and here's what you can learn? Like, was that the point of this little match you guys did?
No, I think the whole thing started, he was wearing an Abercrombie shirt that said Abercrombie Wrestling. And I was like, oh, I didn't know Abercrombie had a wrestling team, and I was kind of, we were giving each other shit a little bit.
You're going to get shit talked to you if you're wearing an Abercrombie wrestling shirt, I think, right?
Right. And that's when he said, no, I do jiu-jitsu. And I think our little grappling match started with an ego thing and me wanting to show him I could beat him and vice versa. And it was a very humbling experience. Okay. I learned really, really quickly that I was not going to beat him. So, and that was, like I said, that was the first time I'd ever gotten hands-on with someone who had some jiu-jitsu skills. And it was an eye-opening experience for sure.
Okay, so you had heard of jiu-jitsu before that, kind of, and it was starting to become a thing. There were some gyms and things like that, and then you had this experience, and you were like, so that experience kind of made you say, "Oh, holy crap, I want to learn this." Is that kind of the way it went down?
For sure. And I went and did some trial classes over at his gym. His gym was pretty far away from where I lived, and I didn't really connect with the team very much. It wasn't my spot. I could tell right away. And then I found another gym closer, and I, really quickly fell in with the guys there, made friends really quickly, and they did, the full-on MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and it was all kind of just hodgepodged together into MMA training. And yeah, like I said, I made fast friends with the guys there, and really quickly just started training full time all the time.
Wow. Okay. And what was it about the first gym that you went to? You said you went to the gym with that friend of yours, and it was a little further from where you lived, and you said you just didn't feel it there. You weren't feeling it. But you went to the next one and you were into it. What was it about? Do you remember? I mean, it was a long time ago,
Yeah,
but I'm just curious what the
I
difference
think
was.
there were, I was rolling with like purple belts and brown belts, and they were very, it's like dismissive and like you're not worth my time kind of an attitude. I remember one guy like completely having his way with me, and like not even making eye contact, not even like, basically like I was a grappling dummy for him. And at the end of the round, he farted on me and just kind of like shoved me to the side. So I was like, you know what, this is not my
Oh my
place.
God.
And
Right.
just some other, like, the coaches just did not seem interested in spending any time explaining things or welcoming me to the gym. It was just kind of like
Right.
I was, existed there, but I wasn't. Nobody really kind of ever singled me out and said, "Hey, how's it going?" None of that. It was just kind of like I was being
Okay.
thrown to the wolves a little bit, and very little
Right.
instruction or any of that. So
So you just went there the one time, or did you go there a couple times, or
I
was it
went
just
there
that
for
one time and you're like, I'm
probably
out?
a couple months, I would say, because I had
Oh,
this
that's a long
friend.
time.
Yeah, I had this friend Cameron. He was the blue belt, and he was the one who trained at that gym. But I never really clicked with the people there. I never,
Okay.
I was learning a little bit, but it wasn't where I wanted to be, and it was like 45 minutes from my house at the time, and just those things all together it made it pretty apparent that that was not going to be the place where I was going to do it. So, but then, like I said, I found a gym close by, and it was the
Right.
total opposite. Everybody like welcomed me with open arms and built me up, and kind of helped me find where my strengths were really quickly. And yeah, so that was having the right gym and the right group of people is so important. And if you're at a gym and you don't like the people there, and you don't feel like you're at home there, then you're at the wrong place for sure. And so, it
Right.
took a little while to find that place and find the spot where I was going to train. And but once I did, I was all about it. That's all I did. So it was
Okay.
and we did everything. So we'd have days where we'd show up, and it was all kickboxing sparring. So you throw on your headgear and your gloves, and it's an hour and a half of just sparring. And then we'd have days where it was all grappling. We'd have days where we'd have put the little gloves on and do grappling with striking, so ground and pound.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I loved like not knowing what we were going to do that day, and showing up and just rolling with it, and getting beat up a lot of the time, but also getting my licks in, and starting to like
Yeah.
see my skills grow.
Yeah.
And then later we got to a spot where we did separate out the training. We would have a kickboxing sparring class that was all stand up, where we would hit pads, and at the end of class we would do the sparring, and the next class would be grappling
Okay.
only. And then there was a third class that was MMA, all of it together. So we would do these, I think they were hour-long classes. So it was a 3-hour block of training in the afternoon
Wow.
that we all showed up for every day. And it was just, 3 hours of intense training. And I
And
absolutely loved
is
it.
this where and Chael Sonnen was one of the people you were training with at this time?
No, he was at Team Quest, a different gym. And Team Quest was
Okay.
we were in competition with them. So as I started
Oh.
getting into the amateur fights, and seeing teammates do these fights, he was the owner of this organization we all fought for. So I
Okay.
have been in the training room with him a few times, but he was never like a training partner of mine. Um, like I said, he
Oh,
owned the organization we fought for, and that was cool too. It was like I was seeing these people like Chael, who, when I first met him, nobody knew who he was. He was, fighting in like the local scene, and I think he had just gotten a contract with the UFC, but he kind of went in the UFC and out really quickly. He lost a couple fights and was back out. And so seeing him that period of time and seeing him go from like this unknown guy to slowly starting to build his second run in the UFC, where he started talking and started the becoming who he's known for being now. Watching that progression and watching him go on that title run that led up to that first Anderson Silva fight. You know, this was just a guy who I had always seen at the fights and talked to and hung out around, and watching him gain popularity and also watching him win and string a bunch of wins together and see him turn into the guy he is now. That was just a really special time and a really cool thing to be a part of and see.
Yeah. So I'm curious though, like at this time you're training a lot. It sounded like these 3-hour blocks in one day after day after day. So at this time in your life, in your mind, you're like, I'm going to be a fighter. I'm going to be an MMA fighter. This is my goal right now. Was that like the plan in your mind at that time?
100%. Yeah. It was like my identity was all completely wrapped up into being a fighter. Yeah. Yeah.
And what were you doing for a living at the time though? How were you supporting yourself?
I was installing granite countertops. So, like a construction kind of job. And so, I was doing these hard labor during the day, getting off work and going straight to the practices. And, I was in shape. I was strong. I was, that was part of what I liked about it too, was just, it was hard. It was really hard. And I liked getting through those practices and going like, I accomplished something today. Like I made it through this practice. A lot of people can't make it through this practice, and I made it through. So that was a cool, like self-affirming thing every single day that I was doing.
So at the time, it's crazy that you were at this time in your life. So this is, you're fresh out of high school, right? This is like those first few years out of high school.
Yeah.
That you were training like
18
this?
years old, something like that was when I really kicked into that lifestyle, the training all the time.
And then and for how many years did it last before you had your first fight, and then before you kind of shifted gears and then decided to, maybe this isn't my career,
Yeah. So I think I had my first fight when I was 21, and it was, the amateur fight scene is weird because you're not getting paid. You're not getting if you get injured, you're not getting that covered. It's a risk.
Right.
And, so people would say, yeah, I'll fight on this date. And then the day before drop out. This is really, really common for your opponent to change constantly. And so I signed on to do a fight, and I was supposed to fight another guy who it was his first fight, and, showed up to the venue, and they're like, oh, hey, your guy, didn't make it. He called us and said he wasn't going to be here. But we had the main event was supposed to be for the heavyweight super fight belt, and the champion's opponent didn't show up. So if you want to, you could hop into the main event and fight for this belt. But the guys had 30 fights, so it's up to you. And so I talked to my coach.
Wait, this is what you learned, that you get there, you got to the venue, and you're told this at the venue when you get there.
Yep.
That instead of fighting another guy whose first fight it is, you have the option to fight the title fight or whatever it was with a guy who's already done 30 fights. Holy crap, man. How the hell did you take that news?
I showed up that day to have a fight, right? And
okay.
And so I talked to my coach about it. My coach was like, this is a win-win. Like no one's going to expect you to win, but it's this great experience. Right. Just my coach and my teammates were all like, what do you have to lose? Go for it. And so like I said, it was that same morning I showed up for the rules meeting and all that stuff. And I went from, fighting another debut fighter to fighting a grizzled veteran with 30 fights, and a guy who I had seen fight before, and a guy whose name I already knew. And so, it was like real quickly changing gears and deciding we're going to go for this.
Oh my God, man. Okay. So, and this was did you say it was the title fight?
Yeah, it
like
was
of
for
the
like a
night
super fight
or whatever?
belt. So
The
it was
main event, I think you said.
yeah, it was the main event, and it was not like the heavyweight championship belt. It was they did these super fights, and the super fight had a belt attached to it. And so this one was for the
Okay.
heavyweight super fight belt, and the last fight of the night, the main event, and I had like 4 or 5 hours to go mentally prepare before it was time to show up and do the deal.
I don't know about you, but I don't know how that was, but I feel like personally, I wouldn't want that much time. I'd probably rather have like maybe an hour than 5 hours to have like
Yeah,
5 hours worth of, because I know me, I would just, anxiety would just compound over that time frame.
for sure.
So was
Yeah.
it, was it it was a cage fight though, right? Like,
Hmm.
like a UFC looking cage basically. And,
Yep, cage. So yeah, like you said, those 4 or 5 hours were not a good thing. I had everybody calling me on the phone, teammates who heard I was
I
going to
bet.
do this and going, "Hey, just so you know, I saw this guy fight, a couple months ago. He's dangerous, so careful." And I'm like, "Oh, great, thanks. That's exactly what I want to hear." So there's a lot of that, and a lot of people, friends, close friends, and family, like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Like, this is,
Right.
this is dangerous. Like,
Yeah.
are you sure this is what you want to do?" But I was committed, and like I said, I showed up to
Yeah.
have a fight that day, and that's what I did. And so showed up to the venue for after the rules meeting, and you go to the rules meeting, you go home for a few hours, and then you show up again, and the fights are going to start in an hour or whatever. And so I get set up all backstage and and I had other teammates fighting on this at this show as well. So that was helpful, having other people to
Hmm.
focus on and help
Okay.
them get ready. I was going to be the last fight of the night, so I was able to kind of
Yeah. Right.
help some of the other guys get ready
Right.
and get my mind off of it as much as possible. But
Okay.
it's also like we're in this small venue where it's not like we have locker rooms. It's like a boiler room, basement type of area, and your opponent is just kind of like 30 feet away on the other side of the room. So like seeing him the whole time too, and seeing him like warming up and stretching out, and it was just anxiety is exactly how I would describe it. It was not a pleasant warm up period at all. And then I remember going out of the little locker room area up to where the cage was and watching the first fight. I had never been to like a big MMA show before like this. I had been to small fights, but I'd never been to one with a bunch of people and
Okay.
production and lights and music and all that stuff. And I remember I went up and watched the very beginning of the first fight of the night, and this guy threw like a weird spinning kick and hit the other guy right in the throat. And the sound it made was just like pieces of wood clacking together. And I remember being like, I should not be watching this right now. I need to get I need to get my
Oh my
mind off of this.
God.
And yeah, it was I was at that point I was starting to get like scared, just like, this is
Right.
crazy. What am I
Yeah. Of
doing?
course.
And so, the night goes on, and it's, I get you're in the bullpen basically. You're the next fight,
Yeah.
and warm up as best I can. And my music hits the speakers, and it's time to make that walk out to the cage. And I've never
What was
even
your
been in
music?
a cage
Do you
before.
remember what the music was?
They assigned, they just played. I didn't get to pick that time. I think
Okay.
it was Respect by Pantera, which is not really my jam anyways. But
Okay, sorry folks, we had some audio difficulties there, but things seem to be working better now. So Dale, you were just talking about that first fight that you did, and you were coming out, and the music that was picked for you was Respect by Pantera, right?
yep, I will never forget that song.
I bet.
So the music hits the speakers, and they kind of smack you on the butt and tell you to head out to the cage and go walk up the cage stairs. That's the first time I was close enough to my opponent to really get a good look at him. And I remember him swinging his arms around and kind of trying to loosen up, and seeing like the muscles in his shoulders and like the veins, and just being like, "Oh, what am I doing?" And that's kind of a good a baseline for me anytime I was in a fight was, what am I doing here?
Wow.
But
Okay.
yeah, so, walking up and being across from him, you get your mouthpiece in, and they wipe the Vaseline all over your face, and that time is coming. And
How many people were there? Was it a lot of people in the
a
venue?
couple thousand people.
A
Yeah.
couple thousand.
Yeah, and it's like it's the Roseland Theater in Portland, so it's kind of, there's the cage right in the middle, and there's people standing all around the cage, and then there's a balcony area up above it, and so
Okay.
there's people everywhere, and beer
Right.
cups flying around, and it's a wild experience just to go to one of
Was
those.
it loud? Was it like
Oh
loud
yeah,
as hell?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Oh,
God. I mean, that must have been, I mean, how did that feel like when you're getting ready and it's just like, did you just have adrenaline just
oh
shooting through
yeah,
your body?
yeah. Just it was like electric for sure. And I remember the fight before mine ended in some sort of controversy, and people were mad, and people were throwing beers into the cage, and it was like pandemonium right before my fight, and they had to
Right.
kind of like settle the crowd down
Okay.
and clean up all the beer out of the middle of the cage. And
Right.
so yeah, so it's
Oh my God.
my at this point, the coaches are, and my cornermen are standing next to me, and telling me to relax, and telling me everything's going to be good, and go out and execute my game plan and do what I know how to do.
Okay.
And then the referee says corners out, and that means your cornermen, it's time for them to go, and
Okay.
calls you and the other guy right to the middle of the cage, face to face, to do your little face off, while the ref says, I want a fair fight and all that kind of stuff. And then before I know it, we're touching gloves and
Ooh,
back
here we
across
go.
from each other, and the crowd's going crazy. And that famous "Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it on." And
Okay.
it's so funny because you do all this training, and you have this idea of what you're going to do, and you have this base of skills that you're going to rely on. But especially in that fight, I don't think I had a coherent thought the entire time I was in that fight.
Jesus.
It was just kind of a blur.
Okay.
And really quickly, I landed a left hook and knocked him down.
Oh my God. That's freaking
And
awesome.
I didn't know it at the time, but I also broke my hand throwing that first
Oh
punch.
my God. Now hold on
And
real quick. What weight class are you in at the time?
heavyweight. So yeah, I was
That's
around like 265. The other guy was like
265.
250.
All right. So
Uh,
when Cody told me that you guys are in different weight classes, he was
yeah,
not kidding around. Okay.
no, no.
That's heavyweight. All right.
Yeah, and so I threw a punch, dropped him, and immediately just like ran and tried to get on top of him, and kind of walked him up against the cage, tried to land some punches from the top. He got back up, um, and came forward and threw some punches at me, and I was able to slip them, and I landed another, really cracked him with another good shot, and kind of wobbled him.
Okay.
And then I I got him up against the cage, and I got out of position, and he kind of reversed me to where now I was up against the cage, and he just kind of threw a barrage at me and hit me with a bunch of stuff, and landed a good knee right to the face.
Oh,
And the ref saw, and I wasn't doing enough to defend myself. I was kind of in a downed position, and he was just kind of raining whatever he wanted towards me.
okay.
And the ref stopped it, and it was like, I don't know, 3 minutes or something into the first round.
Okay. So a
And
technical
so,
knockout.
yeah, TKO. And I was fine. Little scrapes and bumps and bruises and stuff, but nothing major. It was more, and this was the frustrating thing about fighting in general for me, was I did not perform anywhere near up to my capabilities.
Okay.
And I felt like I had all the tools necessary to win that fight, but I could not execute any of them.
Okay.
And it was like that in wrestling too. It took me like 7 or 8 matches to get to the point where I could think clearly and breathe and think about what I was doing. Sorry. But
All good.
yeah, I wasn't thinking in there. I was completely on instinct, and the pressure and the people and the crowd, it got to me, and I kind of, I sat in a position I knew I shouldn't sit in, and that was it. That was the end of the fight.
So the game plan, like you said, you couldn't do anything you wanted to do, but I mean, it sounds like a pretty good start that you knocked him down with a left hook.
Definitely.
And I assume you're right-handed, right?
I'm kind of weird. I write left-handed, and I do everything else right-handed. So I box right-handed, but I'm kind of ambidextrous, I guess I would say.
Okay, but I mean,
and
knocking
my left
him
hook
down
is my best punch for sure.
Okay, so I mean, knocking him down with your best punch at the start of the fight, and then knocking him down again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds like a pretty good start to the fight. Obviously, you wish you had a different finish, but I mean, that's a pretty damn good start. And it sounds like it was all stand up, right? Like there wasn't much ground going on in this fight.
He was a guy who didn't go to the. He was a stand up slugger kind of a guy.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was it was kind of over so fast, and the whole experience just happened so fast that it was like, I was just kind of regaining my composure and like, what the hell just happened? That was crazy. What am I thinking doing this? And then my hand started to hurt pretty quickly after the fight was over, and realized that I had broken my hand, and that eventually ended up needing surgery. So I had to take a couple months off. And my first fight was in the books. My coaches were all happy. They're like, like they said in the front side of it, like, this is a win-win for you. You fought for a belt already. You fought in the main event. You felt the pressure. You had good moments in the fight.
All right.
Like I was like on the cusp of victory in that fight, and so it was frustrating. Like, oh, I let that slip through my fingers, and looking back, like, when I knocked him down, I should have just backed off and let him stand back up.
Okay. But what did you do? You had kind of jumped on him?
Yeah,
like, were you trying to take it to the ground?
Guard, basically.
Oh.
Which is not where you want to be if you're. I was like, he's down. I'm going to get on top of him. So
now, how much jiu-jitsu training had you had before this fight?
The jiu-jitsu thing is interesting with the MMA, because at the time, like, if there was a blue belt in the room, it was like, oh man, that's, that guy is a blue belt. It wasn't a time where there were like multiple black belts around. And also I never trained in the gi. So it was all, when I never had a belt, and we never did stripes. It was all like MMA centric jiu-jitsu and grappling. So, and for me, my strength was always the stand-up kickboxing, the striking.
Okay.
And so my game plan was always, if it got to the ground and I was on bottom, just getting up, getting out of there. So I wasn't really like training my guard. I wasn't really doing jiu-jitsu. I was doing like submission grappling, but all geared towards MMA. So grappling a lot, but not real traditional jiu-jitsu by any means.
Okay, so like the jiu-jitsu, because when you say MMA centric jiu-jitsu, I mean, I don't really, like, of all the jiu-jitsu I'm learning now as a student, I don't really know what that really means. Like, even though I've watched plenty of MMA fights, I mean, what would you say? Can you sum it up with a handful of moves or submissions?
Geared towards ground and pound, right? So if you're on top, you're throwing punches. You want to pass the guard, but more to strike better and to finish the fight. And definitely we were working submissions and chokes and all the stuff you learn in jiu-jitsu. But everything I was doing was geared towards, if I'm on top, I'm throwing punches, right? Like, I'm ground and pounding. If I'm on the bottom, I'm trying to get myself to the cage to get myself back up to standing. I was not a guard player. I wasn't offensive from my back. I was all, even at that time, a valid strategy at that time was just, if you're on bottom, hold on and stall so they stand you guys back up. Right.
Oh, so okay. So you were not, sorry, your game plan was not like, let me, like, I hope to triangle this guy or anything like that. It was like, I want to stand up and box or kickbox, basically. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I was good from the top position. I had a couple good submissions, and I was comfortable there. And with the time wrestling, like, I was comfortable on the ground. Just, this was not my best way to win. Was always going to be on the feet.
Okay.
Punching and kicking. And
right.
So yeah, all my grappling training was geared towards that. And And like I said, no belts, no gi, nothing like
Right.
that.
And so, after this fight, you said your coaches were pretty pleased with the outcome. You had stood your ground, which must have it must have looked pretty good for you. You said it was a win-win, but the fact that you had knocked the guy down who had way more experience than you, the fact that you had, at the last minute, you had to like mentally prepare for a different opponent.
Right.
Like at that point, after this fight, even though you broke your hand, you're out for months, were you still like, okay, I'm going to be an MMA fighter. Like that's going to
Definitely.
be my career. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's awesome.
I was like, like I said, the victory was within my grasp there. I had some things I needed to work on. I knew that I had a major adrenaline dump, and that was a big problem. I was like dead tired after that 3 minutes too.
Yeah.
And I could do those 3 hour training sessions with no problem and all the strength and conditioning. And I was in condition. I had a crazy adrenaline dump, and part of it was that my coaches are like, you're going to have that the first few times. Like you're going to have to get to that point where you get comfortable. And the only way to do that is just get in there and do it.
Now, was there any part of you, cause you see those fights nowadays when the ref jumps in and stops it, sometimes the other guy's like, hey, what the hell? I was fine. I mean, was there any part of you that was thinking that, or were you done? Were you like, oh, thank God,
I was like,
I'm
thank
done.
God you saved me.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I was looking for a way out for sure. I was,
okay.
Because I had already gotten to my best positions. He had already taken the best punches I had to throw at him.
Okay.
The tables turned, and then I was like, get me the hell out of here. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
And that was another like red flag for me. It was like, oh, I did not have the fight to the bitter end thing in my head. I had the get me the hell out of here thing in my head.
Right.
And I would find out later that was going to be a recurring thing for me.
Okay. So this must have been like, I mean, what a crazy learning experience for you, because you'd been training hours and hours every day. You'd been, doing like probably little, practice fights with your training partners with headgear or whatever. Right. And just, but nothing, I mean, would you say like none of that can really prepare you for what it's like to go in for your first match?
No, not even close. I had, they call them smokers. It's like where two gyms get together and one gym hosts, and they just pick a bunch of guys to have a fight. And sometimes it's like under kickboxing only rules. Sometimes it's boxing. Sometimes it's jiu-jitsu matches.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's full MMA rules. So I had some of those, but nothing could prepare me for the noise, the crowd, the pressure of that moment for sure was something that nothing can really prepare you for until you just get out there and do it.
Yeah. I can only imagine. And so after this is your first fight. And after that, you were still, your MMA career is like just getting started basically.
Right.
And so you had to take a few months off. You had to have surgery on your freaking hand, which is crazy. So how long was it till your next fight?
My first fight was 2006 in August, I believe. And then my next fight wasn't until January of 2007.
All right. So a couple months.
Yeah, a few months.
Your hand had just healed, basically. It sounds like.
Yeah,
that wasn't much time.
And that stuff heals quickly. It was
all right.
It was the bone kind of here in my thumb that broke.
Okay.
And surgery and back to training, and still on the path of like, I'm going to be a fighter. I'm doing this. I was training with pro fighters and hanging with them in the gym just fine. Like I knew I had confidence in my skill level, especially with the kickboxing. I was dangerous as a kickboxer.
Okay.
And one of my strengths has always been I'm very agile for a big guy.
Okay.
And so, I knew that I had the skills required to win. Like I knew that I was confident in the fact that I could go out and knock people out, and that was something I knew I could do. So I was still very much on the path of like, I'm going to get in there the next time, and I'm going to put it on someone.
Okay. And so how did the next fight go?
Next fight was a lot smoother as far as the opponent. I got an opponent. It was the same opponent the day I showed up.
Supposed to be.
And he was a kickboxer. So it was someone that was probably not going to go to the ground. And someone who one of my coaches had previous experience training. So it was someone that my coach knew. He knew what to look out for. And I had very specific training for that fight because I knew exactly what I was getting into with this guy.
Wow.
And,
So you're training for him, like for the opponent.
Right.
For how long? Like when did you learn who it was going to be? Is it a couple weeks? Is it a month?
Like 6 weeks or so.
That's a good amount of time.
Yeah. So, and I had the preparation for this one. Like I said, it was the same guy I signed up to fight, which was a nice little bonus.
Real quick, did you have any PTSD when you walked into the place? Like, oh shit, are they going to pull this bullshit on me again? Like, are they going to switch the fighter?
Yeah, a little bit. You know, anytime you're in an amateur fight, that is a possibility. Just because of the nature of it. Like I said, nobody's getting paid. It's not like you're really doing them a favor by fighting. So, so show up and it's the same guy and everything's good. And we get to that same part of the night. I got to pick my music this time. So I walked out to Johnny Cash this time.
What song? It's been a while, I know.
Yeah, I'm just blanking on the name of the song.
I'm trying to think of a Johnny Cash song that would be like appropriate for like pumping you up and sounding badass.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Johnny Cash.
I hear the train a coming. It's rolling down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm blanking on the name.
I ain't seen the
song.
sunshine since I don't know when. Folsom Prison. I think it's Folsom Prison Blues.
Folsom Prison Blues. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I walk out and I'm feeling great, and I got people there. My friends are there watching me. I got a whole cheering section in the crowd this time, and I think also people kind of knew me from that last one. They knew that I showed up on short notice. I put a good effort in. So I had like people cheering for me this time. And
sweet.
I felt great. I was like mentally, I'm like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put it on this guy.
Yeah.
And that same moment comes where it's time to touch gloves and go back and put your back against the fence. And are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it on. And this time everything left my head, like, and not in a good way.
That was going to be my question, in a good way or not.
No,
so everything left your head, everything you had planned is suddenly gone, right?
Yep. So, and it was the same kind of start. Like, I landed some good leg kicks. He was trying to kick my leg a lot, and I checked them all. And when you check a leg kick, you're basically just lifting your shin up and letting their shin clang against yours,
and hoping your shin doesn't break, like
and it's
like
just like
Anderson Silva or whoever else we've seen.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. All right. And when you said you were doing leg kicks, are we talking like low kicks? Like you're kicking like his thigh?
Kicks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I was vicious with. I was really good at leg kicks.
Your leg kicks hurt.
So I, landed a few good ones. I landed a couple good punches. He kept trying to kick me in the leg, and I kept checking it. And I remember feeling like a little twinge of pain. But you really don't feel much in the fights.
Okay.
And for some reason, I shot a takedown, which was not part of the game plan, which is not something I would ever really want to do. I don't remember what scenario happened that made me feel like that was the thing to do, but all of a sudden I'm shooting a takedown. I get the takedown. I'm on top.
Oh, you got the takedown. Holy crap.
And landed some decent ground and pound from the top and went for an Americana, which was like one of my go-tos, right?
So you went for an Americana from what you had mount, or you had from side control? You went for an Americana. Got it.
And I had his elbow off I was tight. It was there. And then he squirmed out and I lost position, and he got up, and both of us were I was like on my hands and knees, and we were kind of both popping up at the same time, and he reared back to knee me in the face, and I just I was like, I'm getting out of the way of this. I flopped down to my back to get out of the way of that, and then something happened where the referee stopped us and stood us back up. And as soon as I stood back up, I realized I'm completely gassed. I have no grip strength.
But he had kneed you in the face, or
he tried to, and I got out of the way of it. In the nick of time.
I misunderstood. Okay, so all right. So he didn't land that blow, basically, but you're gassed at this point,
right?
And this is still the first round, right?
Yes, again, 3 minutes in, something like that. And so go back to the kickboxing again, trying to kick my leg over and over and over. He tried to kick me in the head, and it clanged off my forearm. And I remember being like, oh, that one would have hurt if that hit me in the head. And I'm just dead tired. And he got me up against the fence, threw a couple punches, and then hit me with a liver kick that was like perfect textbook shin to the liver. And
Ouch.
I crumpled. I was done. And
Okay.
again, TKO again,
Okay.
like around the 3 minute mark. And
Okay.
again, by the time that punch or that kick landed, I was in that mental space of like, get me the hell out of here. I was, it, that one was especially frustrating because again, I had the victory within my
You had
grasp.
the submission. You had
I
the
had the
submission there.
submission.
Crazy.
I got the takedown. I was getting the better of the stand up. And I let it slip away again. And I got to that mental space of, I don't want to be in here again. And
Uh-huh.
so the second one was much more disheartening than the first one.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I mean, you had the plan, you were confident, and you
Right.
got the guy that you wanted to fight, and you had a game plan. I mean, you were almost there. Okay. So after this fight, like how did it go? What were your, after the post fight, how were your coaches? What were they saying? What kind of feedback were they giving you?
The same kind of like, this is still new to you. We probably need to get your conditioning up more because obviously this is you're going to get this adrenaline dump. So you need to be training in preparation of that more. But
Okay.
still very like, like again, I had the tools necessary. They were always confident in my skills and always confident that if I landed my shots, I was going to knock people out.
Right.
And so still very like supportive and telling me like when this clicks for you, you're going to go on a run and you're going to do very well.
Yeah,
And
I
so
mean, it sounds like you had an amazingly great start to both of your fights to the point
yeah,
where, I
oh,
mean, it's not
absolutely.
like you were just and, hey, hats off to anybody who gets in a ring. Even if you get in a ring and you don't land one punch and get your ass kicked, you know, that's still badass for you to get in the ring. But I mean, the fact that you got in and you were actually, you almost won both fights, which
Right.
I mean, that's a big deal. So,
Hmm.
but after that second fight, you said it was disheartening. Were you like in a mentally different place at this point? Like,
Yeah, I was starting to doubt myself for sure,
okay,
and starting to go like, you know what? I don't have that thing that I see all these other pro fighters have. Like when they get kicked and they're down, it lights a fire under them, and they're like, you know, they go harder. And
right.
I have this thing where when the tables turn and I'm the nail and not the hammer, I'm checking out.
Okay.
So I was starting to realize this, and that was not something that happened in the training room. Like I said, like I could hang with anybody in that training room, and I had a reputation at the gym for being like one of the scariest
Really?
kickboxers.
Jeez. And in the gym, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing was in this fight, my shin took so much damage. I had a apple-sized lump on my shin
Oh my God.
that was like lightning going down my shin bone every time I moved my leg. And it was like 7 months of really, really intense
I was
pain.
about
I
to
had
ask
nerve
how long
damage.
that lasted. That is pretty bad, man.
Yeah.
My God. So it was a long time before your next fight, I take it.
Yeah, it was a long time before I even could start kicking again.
Hmm.
And I remember like, you wear shin guards in training, but getting back to kickboxing sparring, the first couple times I instinctively lifted my shin to check a kick and
Okay.
took a damage on that same spot, was like fall over screaming pain.
Oh my God.
And so it took a while to get comfortable kicking again and confident kicking again.
Yeah.
And, back to training. And that was in 2007. And it wasn't until October of 2008 that I had my third fight. And again, in between all of these, I'm having like these smoker fights and getting
Oh, okay.
experience doing that. I also
Okay.
did
Okay.
some no-gi grappling competitions and had mixed success with those. I
Oh,
took
really?
gold in a couple.
So no-gi
Um,
grappling, is that wrestling and jujitsu?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, no-gi
okay.
jiu-jitsu basically.
Okay. Okay. So you
And
were training a fair bit of jujitsu at the time.
mhm, mhm. And like I said, I had some success there. I took gold in a couple of those competitions. I took silver a couple times. I came in last place a couple times. It just kind of depended on who I was stacked up against and who showed up that day to do the tournaments. But yeah, so I was competing still, and I was
Okay.
doing these smokers and these smaller fights that I didn't have this. this thing pop up in those, this wanting to quit thing.
Okay.
That didn't happen in the smaller competitions. It was under the lights with the crowd. That's where it all kind of falls apart for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't have my last fight until October of 2008. Again, very similar circumstances. I was supposed to fight one guy. He fell out a few weeks before the fight. I got a replacement opponent. And then I made the mistake of Googling him.
Uh-oh.
And the only pictures I could find of him were he was in like the Arnold Classic bodybuilding competition.
Okay.
So he's this like 6'2", like 270 pound with a 6-pack, like jacked, just monster.
Oh my God.
And that got in my head right away. I was like,
oh yeah.
And my training partners were like, oh my, what? You got to fight this guy? And we were, it was a big joke to everybody that like, of course Dale draws this guy.
Yeah. Right.
But I also knew like he was new. I knew that I've trained with those big bodybuilding type guys before, and I knew like they don't last very long. They're usually not very fast. So I was still like, I'm gonna be able to piece this guy up. This is gonna be fine.
Yeah.
So the fight comes, very similar circumstances, strong start. He's not landing any punches. I'm getting out of the way of everything. But the same thing happened again where like my game plan just went out the window, right? I had a very specific game plan for this guy, very specific combinations I was going to throw. And I was not going to kick this guy because I did not want to get my kick caught and be taken down.
Oh, okay.
So very specific game plan.
Hold on. Is that because, is that because when you had Googled him and researched him, like did he have good ground game? And you're like, I don't want to go to the ground with this guy?
He was just a big guy and he trained at a gym that was known for jiu-jitsu.
Oh, okay.
And so
you didn't want to go to the ground for sure.
I didn't want to be on bottom.
On the ground.
Right.
Okay.
So I didn't want to give him something to catch and take me down.
Okay. I see.
But the first thing I did in that fight was I threw a leg kick, which is the only thing I was not supposed to do in the fight. Right.
Got it.
Again, like my head just mentally, I was not in it,
Yeah.
And, it was fine. He didn't catch the kick, but it was just like an example of like, what am I not supposed to kick? Why am I kicking?
Yeah. Did you have that realization at that moment too? Like you kicked and you were like, what the hell am I doing? That's not what I'm supposed to. That's exactly the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. Yep. Man, I can't imagine but I mean, all the pressure and everything that had to be it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And some people have that thing where they can get through that. And like I said, it took me a while in wrestling to get to that point.
Okay.
But, the injuries are stacking up. Every time I do this, my confidence is going down. Mm-hmm. So I ended up getting taken down and not really even punched very much. And I laid down and pretended to be knocked out so the ref would stop it.
Wow.
And, the fight's over and I'm like, what is happening in my head here?
How long did it take? Like how many minutes was that round?
Again, around the 3-minute mark.
Around the 3-minute again. Right. That was your signature thing.
Yeah, man, 3 minutes of fury. But so after that one, I'm like, okay, I don't have the thing that it takes to get in here and do this. Like, I'm just going to if I keep doing this, eventually I'm going to get hurt badly.
Right.
I got really lucky in that I never got knocked out cold. I never took a lot of head trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, it's a matter of time before that happens. And I don't have the thing in my head to get through this. And it's a dangerous learning environment. Right.
Right.
So that was the last time I had an MMA fight. I had a couple more smokers and boxing fights and stuff like that after that. But that was the end of my hopes and dreams of being an MMA fighter, for sure.
So, I mean, I think what you're describing though, this is the path of a lot of people, right? I mean, far more people have your story than have the story of the stars we see in the UFC all the time, right? I mean, how many people have hopes and dreams like you had? And but reality happens and most people aren't quite like the fighters we see. Like you have to, you were doing everything possible in between these fights to be ready for that fight. Like all these smokers and whatever, I forget what you called them, the you were doing plenty of like practice fights in
Yeah, and
between
doing
to
well in
like,
those, you know,
and
like
you were doing
knocking
well,
people
right?
out,
Knocking
like
people out. Holy
yeah, like
crap.
having success. And again, it was like my skills were never the problem.
Right.
Um, and it was also, that was the most frustrating part, was like I felt like if I was in the gym with any of the three guys I fought, I was gonna steamroll them. I was better than
Right.
all three of those guys,
Right.
skills wise.
Okay.
I just mentally I wasn't there. So that
Right.
was, like I said, that was the end of it, and that was I really I stepped down from training after that too.
Okay.
And it was kind of a heartbreaking way to end it. I went 0-3 in my big fights, and just didn't have the mental component. And so yeah.
That must have been a tough, but you said after that you still did a handful of the little smaller fights, the
Mm-hmm.
smokers. Was that, but I mean, did you already know that you weren't going to do another
Yeah,
MMA fight?
for sure, for
So you
sure.
had pretty much made the decision shortly after this third fight, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was, I'm like, the only outcome from here is that eventually I'm going to get hurt, you know?
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and I'd already had surgery on my hand. I had already torn my bicep and had surgery on my bicep.
Ooh.
I fractured my orbital bone getting punched in the face in training one time. So all those things were stacking up, and
Right.
also, as a little sidebar here, all these injuries and surgeries, I had also started to develop a problem with prescription pain pills.
Oh no.
And so,
Okay.
yeah, so it was all like, shortly after that last fight, I kind of burned my life to the ground with the addiction and the pain pills and all of that.
Oh my
So
God. That
that
is,
was,
that is
yeah,
heavy. And that was after the
yeah.
third fight, you said.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. So it was just, I mean, you mentally knew that my hopes and dreams are kind of gone now. And that had to be mentally a very challenging thing to go through. And then here's these pills that I need to recover from my injuries. And it just kind of went from there, the addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, my whole identity was wrapped up in being a fighter, right? I
Right.
cornered fights. I was at the gym every day.
Uh-huh.
And that's what my life revolved around, and having coming to that realization, like I'm not that guy, was
Yeah.
difficult. And then at the same time, the addiction stuff all kind of piling on top of that. So that was a rough period. And that led to a 10-year break from doing any kind of combat sports. I had to kind of get my life back together, and in that period of time, I had a son
Mm-hmm.
who's 7 now, and that's kind of where my path circled back to jujitsu 10 years later.
With your son, right? When
Uh-huh.
you're like, okay, I want to get my son into jujitsu.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, jujitsu's a part of your life again, and martial arts are a part of your life again. But was it hard not even doing anything, martial arts wise for that 10-year period?
Yeah, I think I was ready to just take a break
Yeah.
anyways, even just in sparring, I've probably been hitting the head 10,000 times at least. I was thinking about like how many times did I spar? How many times did I get hit in the head every round I sparred? And that realization too of like, I don't need to get hit in the head anymore. you
Yeah.
know, and just like the
10,000
wear and
times
tear on
probably
the
enough.
body. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And then during that time though, you never thought to yourself, well, I don't want to get hit in the head anymore, but maybe jujitsu, maybe I'll
Exactly,
try that.
exactly. And I had never done it in a gi, and I had never done it the right way with
Okay.
belts. And
Okay.
I knew, hey, there's no head trauma with jujitsu.
Yep.
So in 2021, I looked up where the closest gym was to me, and it was One Jiu-Jitsu, which you're very familiar with.
Yes, I am.
And I signed up there. I went for about 3 months, probably only like 2 classes a week.
Okay.
But I was in a sparring round with another white belt who was a wrestler,
Okay.
and our sparring round kind of like was escalating, and
Okay.
more and more intensity. And I ended up getting like an Americana thrown. I was in the top position,
Okay.
passing,
Yeah.
trying to pass to side control, and he kind of threw on an Americana from a weird position and
Yeah.
like wrenched it all the way really fast and tore my rotator cuff.
Oh my God, man. Now, I've never torn a rotator cuff. Did you feel a tear right away? Or a
Yeah,
pop or?
yeah,
Yeah.
I felt the tear, and then I tried to train with it for a few weeks after that, and it was like, okay, this is a real issue.
Okay.
I ended up getting an MRI, and it was a partial length tear.
Okay.
And then I like bursitis and all this other stuff in my shoulder. And
Okay.
basically the doctor's like, it's not at a surgery point yet, but with all the other stuff going on there, you're probably going to need a shoulder replacement eventually.
Oh my God.
Um,
Okay.
so that was 2021. And I stopped and rehabbed my shoulder, and I lifted weights a lot and got my shoulder back to where it doesn't bother me anymore.
Okay.
And
If I may ask a question real
yeah,
quick though, because I didn't start training at one. My son started first. It's a similar story for a lot of us dads that, you get your kids into it first, then you start. So I got my son into it in 2024. Yeah, 2024. That's when I started as well. Wait, what year is this? No, sorry, 2023. So what in 2021 were the usual instructors there? Wellington, Jiva, was
yep.
Mo.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep,
so
I
those
got
guys
lucky
were
enough
there then.
to roll with both Wellington and Jiva in
Oh,
my time there, and
okay.
that was very again, I had never put a gi on. I had
Okay.
never um, felt that the difference in the no gi game to the
Okay.
gi.
Okay.
But I remember rolling with Wellington, and he hit some weird, like I think it's called an elevator pass, where I was on top and he had his heels on my hips and completely inverted me upside down off the ground, all 280 pounds of me at that time.
Right.
And I remember having the thought, like, oh, I'm going to land on my head and break my neck here.
Yeah, but
And
he
then
knew what
he
he was
like
doing, I'm sure.
gently cradled my neck down and
Yes.
rolled me. And it was like the nicest way he could have done it. And like he was in complete control of me the entire time.
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
being like, oh, wow, that was crazy. Like, and so I had some pretty awesome experiences there, and
Yeah.
I loved. You guys have that cool thing of the Brazilian Portuguese accent, and there's something really cool about the old school Brazilian guys. Like I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
No question about it. Yeah. We've
And
got we've got that on you guys, the Brazilian
for
the
sure,
Brazilian
for sure.
accents. No
And
question.
just like the depth of you guys have multiple black belts in the room at any
Yeah.
given time. And so I loved one. I have nothing bad to say about one. Eventually, I took my son to a birthday party, and one of his buddies from school was training at Steez, and I had
Okay.
known like I wanted to get Wyatt into jiu-jitsu as early as possible.
Yeah.
So he had a friend that was going, and that was his kind of, he wanted to do it, and it was the
Okay.
right time. And so, yeah, we went to Steez and checked out a trial class, and he loved it. And we love Coach Jimmy. He's great with the kids and a good role model, a good guy. Wants it to be fun over everything else. It's the most
Yeah.
important thing for him with the kids. And I love the gym, the environment, the people. And so Wyatt trained there for about 6 months, and that I started getting the itch again.
Okay.
And like I said, really love the people at Steez. And Jimmy has a unique environment there. I think Jeremy touched on this, but he wanted it to be like a clubhouse,
Yeah.
And like you said, we've got the foosball table, and we've got air hockey and video games, and there's leather couches everywhere, and
There's a
then we've
mat
got
on this. What I mean, yeah, it's I mean, because I've been there. When I talked to Jeremy, I think I don't think I'd even been there when I interviewed Jeremy. It was after, but now I've been there a couple times to, for the equipment and whatnot. But yeah, just it's an awesome environment. It's so laid back, and very, very welcoming to, I
oh
think,
yeah.
kids, to adults. It's got a very fun vibe to it, and I think it's awesome for sure what Jimmy has created there. And even like on one side you've got the jujitsu mat, and there's mats on the other side. I don't know what you
Mhm.
use those mats for. Is that jujitsu as well, or like two
That's
classes
where
at
the
once?
judo classes
The
are, and
judo
then
classes. All right.
sometimes there's like a women's class going on one side and the other class going on the other side. But
Okay.
he's got
Yeah.
two mat spaces, and you can
Okay.
use them however he wants. And then also, Wyatt comes with me when I train, and he goes and rolls around on the other mat when it's
Okay.
free. And
Okay.
so yeah, so about it was about 7 months ago, I decided to get back into it. And I've been there at least 3 times a week.
Mhm.
Sometimes, sometimes I'll hit 7 classes a week. It just depends on my schedule and how I'm feeling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm fully back into it and loving every minute of it.
Is it yeah, what's it like? I mean, for you, I mean, you had the crazy career you had and the ups and downs and the injuries and followed by the letdown of kind of letting the dream go, then
Right.
the addiction and then the 10-year break. And now you're back and does it feel good to be back into a sport like this? And but it's got to bring back a lot of memories at the same time. um yeah, but is it good? Does it feel like it's helping you, mentally? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's been I can't even say how positive it's been for me. And also like part of it is Wyatt, my son trains there. It's something we do
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
He just recently got invited to go to the Friday night sparring class with the adults and teens.
Oh, cool.
So it's like something we do together on Friday nights. We're gearing
Nice.
up to go tonight.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's been such a good thing for him and for me. And then, the bonus is that Cody is, I would love it if Cody and I trained at the same place. That would be awesome.
Hmm.
But he's got his spot.
Yeah.
We've got ours,
Yeah.
and we're kind of on this path and this journey all together, the three of us. Wyatt's just got his first red stripe
Okay.
recently, so he's got 5 stripes on his white belt.
Okay.
And I'm a 0 stripe white belt at 40 years old, and I've been around the sport for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's kind of like, well, I feel like I wasted a lot of those training years. I should have been in a gi right away. I should have um, had that more specific training. But at the same time, it's like that was my journey.
Yeah.
That's how I did it.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool to be in the gi, the traditional, with the belt and learning the grips, and it's totally different than the no-gi game is. It's much slower. You have to rely completely on technique.
Hmm.
As opposed to no-gi, you can get away with a lot more using athleticism and strength, and you have all this space in no-gi where you can
Okay.
slip things through, and in the gi, the gi takes up all that space. So you have to be very technical, and your technique has to be on point.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so that's one thing I really enjoy about the gi.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I still don't really understand the difference between gi and no gi. And maybe what you just said is like common knowledge because I like I was telling you yesterday, and for our listeners who don't know, like at our gym in one, there's only one day a week. There is one morning a week when you can do no gi. And I've done that a bunch of times whenever I pretty much have free time on a Wednesday morning. And there's a big difference between that and gi, but I mean, I haven't done it enough to understand what you just said, that you can
Right.
rely more on athleticism and strength in the no gi than you can in the gi. I mean, I've just noticed like the main difference for me is I'm sweatier and so is the other
Yeah.
guy. So
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
slip out of grips easier than I can when
Exactly.
somebody's holding
Exactly.
my gi. Like when I'm
Hmm.
rolling with a purple or brown or black belt and they get a good solid grip on my gi, they can hold that grip for the entire 6 minute round if it's Wellington who puts the time on the clock. And that just sucks. It's like, man, you just have to have good. Sometimes I feel like if you can if you've got good grip strength and you can hold that grip, that just sucks for me because I can't do anything if you've got that grip. But again, my technique still sucks, and I'm sure there's ways to eliminate that grip. But you know, I'm curious about the fact that when I asked you yesterday, I'm shocked that after all of that, somehow you are a zero stripe white belt because I don't feel like you really are. You're not really a zero stripe white belt. Somebody who's got the training and experience that you've had. So I would anticipate you're going to, get promoted uh relatively quickly. I don't know shit, but I mean, it just seems like I'd be scared to go against you. For instance, I've got my one fancy stripe, but I'd
Well,
say you're probably ahead of me.
so coming back into this at 40 years old, and especially at the place I'm at, um, the gym I'm at, the fantastic training partners, fantastic coach. I love being there. I love the people. So my goal going in every single day is to be a good training partner.
Yeah.
That's above everything else. I'm bigger than most people in there. I'm probably the biggest guy in the gym.
Okay.
And I have a strength advantage over a lot of people. And no matter who I'm going with, I try very hard to not smash people and not and just be a good training partner. And that's the best compliment I can get these days, is when someone tells me I'm a good training partner. That's exactly what I go in there with the goal of being. And it's taken me a while to, the way I used to train and spar particularly was try to win all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, who cares what technique you're doing? If you're winning, like, you're doing great. That's the way that we always trained.
Yeah.
And so it took me a couple months for that to click, like, oh, that's not how you get better, right? Like,
Right.
I'm going to start putting myself in the positions I'm weakest in and trying to work from there. Like, hey, I know I can pass. My strengths are probably, being on top is where I want to be. Passing, I've got a decent passing game, and I'm good from side control. I have a couple go-to submissions.
Okay.
But, like, okay, now it's time to stop doing those because I know I can do those, and now it's time to start focusing on actually growing. And it's taken me a while to shift over into that way of looking at it, and I think that's why I haven't been promoted yet. It's like 7 months, I said, and just trying not to rely on strength, not to rely on athletic movement, and really focus on the techniques.
So what would you say, like because I was going to ask what your strengths are and whatnot, and you just kind of listed them. What are like some top areas where you really want to work on right now?
The worst spots for me are when someone has passed my guard and someone's on top in side control or mount.
Okay.
Getting back to half guard, wrestling back up, retaining guard. I tend to get stuck on the bottom.
Okay.
When I get past.
Okay.
And I have
me too.
I have a decent guard. I have some submissions from there. I have some good sweeps. Really good with the scissor sweep. That's like my go-to.
Okay.
And so I have those areas where I know I'm good at, but it's once someone has passed guard and they're in side control or mount, that's where I tend to flounder.
Okay.
And so that's really what I'm trying to focus on right now. And especially because I'm going to be competing in May. So.
Right. Hey, nice transition. I wanted to ask about that because you mentioned that yesterday. So competing in May in now this will be your first ever strictly jiu-jitsu competition, but I guess it's somewhat similar to the ones you were talking about before. Yeah. Where you were doing the grappling competitions, right? So except this one will be, so the main difference will be this is strictly jiu-jitsu and it's in a gi, right?
Yep.
Okay, so May is that the one Cody's going to do as well in May?
No, he's doing one in April. Yeah.
Right.
And I think the one I'm doing is IBJJF Masters International.
Okay. So are you looking forward to it?
I am, yeah. And I had no intentions of competing.
Okay.
Especially this quickly. But I have a training partner who is another white belt who is another big guy. And he, I think, recognized that I have some experience and he's always asked me questions after we roll, and we're similar size. And so we've kind of developed this relationship and training, and he ended up buying a pack of private lessons from Coach Jimmy and asked me to be a part of those and asked me to go to those with him. So I'm like his drilling partner for these private lessons, which has been awesome because I get to go to these private lessons and soak up all the stuff that he's learning.
Right.
But he decided he was going to compete, and I'm like, well, we're doing these lessons together. We're training together. I'll do it with you. I'll go to the same competition. Let's do it. Yeah. And so it's something that he and I have been working towards, and I get to watch his game grow and help him get better. And it's been just a really awesome experience, being able to help him and also being able to use that time to facilitate my own growth.
Sure.
And develop that. We were talking yesterday about the camaraderie and the bond you make with your training partners.
Yep.
You go through these grueling practices and you suffer together, And it really, the bonds you have with training partners are unique to jiu-jitsu, I think, or combat sports. Those relationships you develop are unlike, they're deep in a way that most other sports and activities, you don't get those kind of bonds.
Absolutely. And that's a common theme of this podcast for sure, is the bonds you create from, for some reason, yeah, the suffering you go through together. And I'm sure it's even more intense when, like, you and your training partner, that you're kind of training together for for an upcoming competition that you are both going to do. I'm sure that's even, you're going to experience and already are experiencing, and even experiencing an even deeper bond there, I would imagine.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're,
that's awesome.
the private lessons together. And,
Right.
So yeah, that's been a really cool side bonus too. I'm already enjoying being at the gym, and my training partners are amazing. Coach Jimmy is great. I cannot say enough good things about our gym, and you go to a great gym as well. I was able to drop in last week,
Yeah.
or a couple weeks ago, for a class there.
Yeah.
And they welcomed me with open arms and were amazing and gracious, and I got to get some different looks. You're training with the same people every day,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of like leveling up together, and they get to know your game and you know theirs. So when you roll, it's like they know what to expect. They know where your strong spots are.
Yep.
And so to go to another place and kind of get a fresh look at, okay, how do my skills stack up against someone who doesn't know my game?
Right.
So that was cool to be able to go and do that, and get a different look at the style of training there is a little different than ours. And yeah, it was great. And Cody also came to Steez and did a session with us.
Right. That's awesome.
And so yeah, I think it's really cool to be able to pop in at especially at one where the instruction is great, the people are great there as well. And yeah, man, I'm just loving every minute of being back on the mats, and growing and embracing the gi. It took a while the gi is sweaty and uncomfortable, and it's always falling off, and the belt is always askew.
I hate the gi.
And, yeah. And it took a while for me to embrace that, but I've embraced it now, and I love gearing up and putting my rash guard on and taping everything up, and getting in there every day. It's been amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. In fact, I trained last night for the first time in 2 weeks because I had another potential rib injury, and I think it's good now because I trained last night. I didn't feel anything at all, and had some actually felt good about most of my rolls, which is unusual for me. Usually I leave there feeling like, man, I'm worse than I thought I was when I went in, but it doesn't discourage me that much. I still want to get back in, but last night was a rare one where it was like, oh, I actually did one thing that I've never been able to do, which is Cody taught me. Of course, Cody taught me most everything. He taught me, I didn't know you could do a Kimura from half guard, right? So if I've got somebody if I'm on the bottom half guard and he Kimura'd me, and I was like, oh, is that a thing? And he's like, yeah. Like, don't you study these things? Because Cody does.
Don't you spend 8 hours a day
right.
online making meticulous notes? Yep.
Yeah, right. Doesn't everybody? No, but I'm benefiting from his studying. So he taught me that. He's like, yeah, you can do a Kimura from half guard. So since then, that was like 2 months ago. I don't know. I've been trying to do it because I play bottom half guard all the time. And I've been trying, and I haven't gotten there until last night when I couldn't get the submission locked in. Like, my opponent already had grabbed either my lapel or his own with the arm that I'm trying to Kimura, right? But I did get my hand around locked. So, and again, another thing Cody taught me, my God, shout out Cody Corzine, not Corzine. He told me that quote, he's like, every submission is a position.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to get the submission here, but don't let this go. Hold on to this damn. I've got his arm. Hold on to it. And eventually it turned into, kind of, I don't know if it's considered a sweep if I'm in bottom half guard and then I'm on top in his half guard. I don't think that counts, but now I'm on top, and I held on to that arm for the whole round until the end. Even I let go of the Kimura at one point because I'm like, I'm not gonna, I don't know. I got to try something else here, but I held on to it with one hand, and and then I went for a paper cut and almost had the paper cut. Anyway, little victories. For me,
For
that was
sure.
like the
It's all
closest
about the
I've
little
ever
victories.
come
Yep.
to, right? To anything like that. And another role I had was kind of interesting. The professor made me go against a new guy, a brand new guy. And it's funny, there's a big difference between like white belts like me that have been training for almost a year and a half and a brand new white belt who's young. And I mean, it's all good. We're having a good time. I took his back, I got my hooks in. And then at some point, he just let out this, it was kind of, he just like screamed like this growl, like, and then he started thrashing around like crazy to the point where, I don't know, I'm not that great when I take someone's back. Like I know how to get my hooks in and hold it there, but I don't really know how to like finish very well. Anyway, he let out that crazy yelp and he started thrashing around, and eventually I end up on my back and then he's in my guard, and eventually the clock ran out from there. But anyway, that was just kind of a wild experience with a brand new white belt.
Yeah, well, and I've listened to every episode of the podcast, and the recurring theme that I've picked up is that you're very hard on yourself. You, I think in particular, you have a very negative self outlook,
Well,
and
it's
it's
the
really
sport, I
easy to
feel
get
like,
that. It's very easy to get in that zone,
Yeah.
because like I said, you're with the same training partners.
Right.
You're leveling up at different paces. Things are clicking for people that aren't clicking for you yet.
Yeah.
You see your peers being promoted, and you see Cody getting 2 stripes out of nowhere at the same time. And so it can be very discouraging, and you can leave there feeling like you've wasted your time, like you haven't gotten any better.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to keep those small victories in mind. Like,
Right.
like I roll with we have a lot of new purple belts and a lot of blue belts at our gym, and I get rolls with them. And it's like, I'm not going to submit most of those people. I'm not, like, most of the time I'm losing those exchanges.
Right.
But if I can get to a better position this round than I did last time, that's a victory. If I can pull off a sweep or threaten a submission, I don't even have to get it.
Right.
You have to really like put your mindset in that space of being like recognizing where your little victories are, and not focusing so much on the negatives, and because it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to
it is
to leave that training room being like, I suck. Like, it's never gonna work out for me. I'm always gonna suck. It's very easy to get in that headspace.
You would know. I mean, about headspaces in martial arts very well. So, but Dale, we've reached, this is the longest episode so far. It's going to be an hour and a half, which is awesome. And there's been so much good stuff here. But in closing, I usually have my traditional question I ask, but I feel like it needs to be a little different with you. I usually say, what advice do you have to people out there listening who want to start jiu-jitsu, haven't started yet? But because of your unique experience, I kind of want to ask you a question. Like if we have listeners out there who are kind of like you, where you were maybe 10 years ago going through the fights and, it's just not working out the way they thought it would, like, or maybe like, what would you tell yourself to kind of encourage yourself to like, just not necessarily continue fighting, but just like, hey man, maybe try jujitsu or maybe try this. Like what would you say?
Yeah, I think, life is constantly evolving and changing, and we all have expectations of where we want to be. And sometimes you don't get there. And for me, I think just getting out there on the mats is a win. There are the vast majority of people will never try this. It's like, it's too intimidating, the thought of going hands on with someone like that. And sometimes you're going to get dominated. You're going to feel like a child in there, and that's not a good feeling. People don't want to feel that. But just getting out there and doing it is a win in itself. And it's, life throws you curveballs, and like I said, things don't work out the way you thought they would sometimes, but that's your opportunity to roll with those punches and figure out how to get back up and dust yourself off and get back after it. And that's that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm, like I said, loving every second of it. But yeah, I think a lot of people, this is an intimidating sport, and it's people don't want to feel that, they don't want to suffer. They don't,
Hmm.
most people, most sane people, right, don't
Yeah.
feel like getting your arm twisted off by another dude while
Right.
he's dripping sweat all over you, and
Yeah.
his hair is in your face, and most people don't want to do that, right?
Nope.
So and I think that's a big mental hurdle for a lot of people, just the physical contact and the intimacy of sweating all over each other and stuff. And so I think there's a lot of people out there who feel like they want to do it, but that stuff intimidates them, and that stops them from trying. And
Yeah.
we're in, especially in Orange County, we're in a place where there are so many awesome gyms with great instruction and black belts all over the place. And yeah, anyone who's interested in it, I would just say go do a trial class. If you don't feel like the gym is the right place right off the bat, go to another one,
Yeah.
because that's important. It's important to feel like you're a part of the team.
Yeah.
That's a real important thing, and not every gym is good at doing that. So
Yeah.
yeah, just get in there, get after it. It's so much fun, and it's like, as you know, I've heard you say it's like therapy, and it really is. Uh, it's impossible if you're having a bad day and you've got all this stuff going on in your head and negativity. It's impossible to hang on to that stuff getting through a training session. That all has to go away, and that's one of the awesome benefits of doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, you will leave there feeling better than you did when you went in every single time, and it's most apparent if you're having a crappy day. You will feel better.
Absolutely.
And as Chris says in an episode coming out next week, it's like he was saying, an episode you haven't heard yet, the only one you haven't heard yet, Dale, because it comes out next week. He says, like if he's having a bad day, he prefers to go in there and lose and get choked out rather than win. It's like he leaves there feeling like that did more than if I had gone in and dominated. I need to go and get my butt kicked a little bit. So yeah, man, therapeutic. And I think that's great advice. And obviously we do live in an awesome area with two of the greatest gyms, you know, nationwide, arguably, for sure, and possibly even worldwide. But yeah, man, we've done an hour and a half here, Dale. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. These are amazing stories, and I can't wait to get this episode out there. So, yeah, thanks again, man. And I'm going to stop this, so don't go anywhere yet, but we'll stop the recording there.
Well,
Sound
thank you
good?
for so much. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit, and I've watched every episode. I love the show, and keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate that, Dale. I really do. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Connor.